I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. I think the best place for us to start is right here.
Hey, Roman numeral 7, babe, drop it like it's hot. If this world was mine, I take it, dreams and make them multiply. If this world was mine, I take it, enemies in front of God. Introduce them to that light, hit them strictly with that fire.
That has been a Luther from Kendrick Lamar and SZA. That song is a hit, but here's the thing. Last month, when it dropped out of the top 40 on Billboard's Hot 100 charts, it was the first time in 35 years that there was not one single rap song in that top 40. Meanwhile, on the other hand, rappers are near the top of the podcast charts all the time. A lot's going on there. So what do these shifts mean for hip-hop's place in the pop culture zeitgeist? Mastermind is here, Jay Smooth is here, and Michelle Santosuosso is here. They have thoughts on this. Hello, all of you. How's it going?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Nice to have you here. Listen, okay, I should say, since this problem arose, the crisis has been slightly averted because now rap is back in the top 40 thanks to Megan Thee Stallion and her song Lover Girl. Hip-hop is all over the recent Grammy nominations, including for Best Album of the Year. Also, Outkast, just this weekend, admitted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So no question that hip-hop is still one of the largest drivers of pop culture. However, but we're talking about this moment that happened last month, Mastermind. When it happened, when we got to this place, okay, there's no rap songs in the Billboard Top 40. That's a big thing. What was your reaction to that?
Let's also say Salt and Pepper was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. You can't forget them.
Yeah.
My initial reaction was a little bit of shock and sadness, but there was also a part of me that was kind of like, I felt this coming, so maybe not so surprised. As a programmer, music goes in waves and, things come in and things go out. But 35 years is a pretty good track record. So the fact, and in those 35 years, hip hop and R&B has kind of shifted in and out and whatnot, but to be completely gone for however long it was a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, that news story sort of like made the headlines, made the rounds on my Instagram everywhere I was looking. Michelle, the idea that rap would vanish from the top 40 for the first time in 35 years, it sparked a lot of debate among rap fans, but there are also some important caveats underpinning why it happened. Do you want to just explain a little bit of that context?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that the way the charts are assembled now, it's the success of really big pop artists like Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter. They've delivered these new albums that have multiple cuts on them that get massive spins and streams, and that has a tendency to displace other songs out of the top 40. And it's when you look at the list of songs with like the longest ever runs on the Hot 100, they're all from the streaming era. So streaming uses algorithms to kind of feed people songs they've already played or keep them in their comfort zone. And that's creating like an atmosphere where you're not being challenged on your music taste. You're being served music to keep you on the platform. That's the goal.
And for context, just like the album you're talking about there, like that Taylor Swift album has 12 songs. All 12 songs end up taking space in that top 40. So suddenly sort of, it's not the charts of 35 years ago, say, where like every album would have one song on those charts. It's like the streaming makes it so that the entire chart is occupied by one artist sometimes. Michelle, can you just remind us for a moment the role of metrics like the Billboard Hot 100 or radio or streaming spins, and like music sales? Like how much do they play a role traditionally in terms of how successful an artist is?
I mean, it all goes into play. Billboards run on like a point system. They have different metrics that are holding different weight, whether it's streaming, sales, radio airplay, music videos, streams, physical sales and paid downloads. And then they kind of create a round number and that determines the final chart placement. And they've changed the chart rules a little bit to go with the times.
Every time that the chart rules change, there's a lot of griping of being like, but it used to be different. How could we possibly sort of end up in a place like this? But Jay, like there was a time when doing well on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, that would be the thing you'd brag about, right? Like that would be like the thing of like, hey, like Jay-Z every single time would be like, let me just recount all the #1 albums that I have had. But yesterday's rappers are not today's rappers, obviously. There's something about the weight that has shifted in terms of how significant they are. How much weight do you think this generation of rappers puts on a chart like the Billboard Hot 100s?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like this generation is much more obsessed generally with just tracking statistics in general than we were when I was coming up. I think JID said kids argue about record sales as if they're record execs themselves. And I think it makes sense when you look at how so much of our life online, we have these likes, follows, and shares, these numbers attached to all our interaction with each other. It makes sense we'd be drawn to understand our art that way. But as far as Billboard goes, I think Billboard used to track something that was easily understandable. It was basically physical sales and airplay.
Yeah.
But like Michelle was talking about, nowadays, because of how the business has evolved, Billboard is tracking all these different variables in this sort of Nate Silver statistical model, and how they tabulate is basically a trade secret. So I think numbers like a kid can look at streaming numbers, or a young artist can look at streaming numbers, and that's easily understood and relatable to the metrics that are already tracking the rest of our life.
I'll tell you one thing that hip hop does not like is the idea of these measures being trade secrets, because suddenly you're like, well, hold on a minute. Well, what is going on to this count? How are we being advantaged or disadvantaged? There's a long history of also distrust in terms of how those metrics are counted. Mastermind, what do you make of this in terms of the place that those metrics have come to occupy?
It was a couple of things that Jay touched upon in terms of the word business, and I don't know how much of the newer generation actually understands the business aspect of the music business. And that's not a new thing. I mean, it's kind of been a thing throughout, music's history. But I also believe that, throughout my tenure in programming, the only artists that dismiss or complain about radio are the ones that either never get played or have no chance of ever getting played. They're the ones that complain. It's, any artist that either was, first discovered on radio, had a hit record on radio, gets played every 2 hours on radio, you're never going to hear them complain. And then on top of that, I think there's also a disconnect with the value that artists put in streaming because of the digital space and the, as Jay had mentioned, all the likes and all the clout chasing. An artist will, and I use this with quotations, will pay an Amazon or a Spotify to get, at least in Toronto anyway, to get their image put on a billboard in, Young Dundas Square, so they could take a picture of that and put it on their Instagram. And again, they're paying for that versus worrying about getting on radio or even satellite radio. And to put it in perspective, I think, Sirius XM, which, I have a station on, I have a channel on Sirius XM. I think they pay at least $50 US per play, whereas I think I just saw something recently where Spotify pays 0.005 cents per play. So for like a million plays on Spotify, you'll get $3,000. If you got 1 million plays on Sirius XM, that's, I don't know, my math, $50 million.
It's more than that, but yes. There's a significant sort of financial difference there, right? That's the thing you're getting at, is in terms of where the attention should be focused, maybe their attention is focused on the wrong thing. Is that what you're saying? To
a certain degree, but I mean, don't focus on the wrong thing, just focus on all of it, I think, right? So I think that's how they'll help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to Mastermind's point, though, the heaviest of the weights on the chart, and this is still one of the most prominent ways that people are consuming music, whether they want to admit to it or not, is radio airplay. Yeah. So, it has more, it still has the same weight. It's just, and I don't know if this is going on in Canada, but in the US after deregulation, radio stations, for the most part, are not targeting young consumers. They're targeting people 35 and up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's problematic with a art form that is typically run by young people, right? And pushed forward by younger generations. There's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I there's a lot to think about there, just in terms of the idea of like where that energy is going, and I want to just sit with that for a moment, but I also want to shift gears because there's a lot that's going on in the world of hip hop. Because at the same time, right, that this is happening, the idea that suddenly there are no hip hop songs in the top 40, there is another realm where rappers are finding a lot of success.
Who's your favorite rapper of all time?
It's gonna be Ice Cube.
Ice Cube over Biggie?
Yeah.
So you telling me Ice Cube is a better storyteller than Biggie?
Lyricist?
You bugging.
But Biggie's one of the best.
You lost your
But Biggie's one of the best.
Big Ice Cube is better than Biggie with storytelling?
As a totality, yes.
Bugging.
So that's Drink Champs. There's truly nothing like when Nori gets going, right? When rapper turned podcaster Nori gets going, his co-host is DJ EFN, and then you heard them debating with Tony Yayo, and there's a lot of yelling going on here. But Drink Champs is just one of several podcasts that are hosted by high-profile rappers. The New York Times published a piece on Joe Budden, who's like, I remember when Joe Budden rapped once. That seemed to be a long time ago, because now what he does is he's a podcaster, and not only that, he makes around $1 million a month from podcasting and also Patreon. Jay, briefly, how did we get to this moment where rappers are among the most dominant voices in the hip-hop podcasting space?
Well, I think it reflects a shift where for a long time as a musician, your number one goal was to sell your music, and then your personality and your charisma would be in a supporting role of connecting people with the music. But with the way that business and media have changed nowadays, in many ways, your brand and your persona is the main product. And either the music is there to support that, or especially for an older artist like Joe Budden, who might be struggling to fit in with the modern sounds, you could just scrap the music part completely. And, the first step for a lot of older artists has been going on reality shows like Love and Hip Hop, where you can build up your brand with this sort of contrived drama. And then I think some people like Joe Budden realized we don't have to go out in the world and produce a whole TV show. We can just have some nonsense drama sitting on a couch in front of some microphones and make even more money. And because of this power of the celebrity they bring, they're naturally going to box out a lot of the other people who are in the space, maybe trying to do something more thoughtful. So I think for better or worse, it's a consequence of how the business has evolved.
Michelle, it's not lost on me that the rappers making the biggest waves in podcasting, they are not the newer rappers. They are, in fact, the older rappers. They are the veterans. Why do you think that is?
I honestly, I agree with Jay. I think it's a natural career pivot. And I think the reason why they're connecting is, hip hop is built on cred, right? Credibility and authenticity, not to mention the name recognition that we're speaking about. So, and also voice. These are guys that know how to perform on a microphone.
Yeah.
They have resonance. And I think that's part of the reason why that's happening. And specifically with Budden, he's got that experience of being a hip hop artist that was in the Universal system at Def Jam. So it's interesting context that he can bring to the conversation.
Mastermind, in all of this, like you've been a radio programmer and a host for decades, right? Like your show, the Mastermind Street Jam, was the first hip hop program on Canadian commercial radio airwaves. What is different about the hip hop talk, like the sort of talk programming that we're getting now compared to what was available to hip hop fans like in the past?
I mean, I can only speak about, what happened here in Toronto and Canada, but, it was very much destination tuning because you weren't on every day. It was, the hip hop culture wasn't available on a daily basis because we didn't have, a 24-hour channel. And I don't even think Hot 97 became a thing until 93. So, I mean, up until then, you had Mr. Magic and you had Red Alert and Chuck Chill Out, and they were only on the weekends as well in New York City. So it was very much destination tuning. And, with the exception of, I guess, Mr. Magic, there wasn't a lot of talking on those shows. Those were mixed shows. And, with my show, there was talking. And you tried to, encapsulate a week's worth of, information that happened in the in the biosphere of hip hop and culture and bring that to your audience. So it was, people were tuning in for the music. People were turning in to get an information, a boost of stuff they may not have known or heard about. And I think the difference now is it's everywhere, right? Like you don't have to wait to get something. It's on demand, at multiple different platforms, on your phone. So the accessibility, as you're taking the bus to work or you're driving in the car and you're just listening to these podcasts, it's all there. Whereas before that didn't exist. The on-demand component of it definitely didn't exist. And having celebrities be the hosts of these things is a huge, attraction, right? Like for me, being able to tune into somebody that I was a fan of as an artist, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. Let's listen.
Well, that may be great, but the limitations are sometimes a little obvious. And this is not to sort of pick on one individual person. This is not to start beef. Joe Budden has a much larger audience than I do. I don't want that fight. However, as rappers sort of turn to podcasting, the limitations can sometimes be a little bit obvious in terms of just like how good they are at as hosts. Because yes, you have the show, you have the audience. Do you handle topics sensitively when they are like really big? I don't know. Do you end up cutting your guests off all the time? Yes, maybe. I want to play you guys this exchange from the Joe Budden podcast. Mark Lamont Hill is on the show there, and he's a contributor. He's an academic. He also works for Al Jazeera. And in this clip, he's trying to land this big, serious point, and then listen to what happens here.
I work for Al Jazeera. My colleagues, every colleague I have in Gaza has been murdered. Every single colleague I have in Gaza has been murdered. So we got a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff to pay attention to.
That's pretty good.
All right, Young Thug dissed, I get scared every time he do that shit.
He do it so fast. So you gotta.
Everybody know in Gaza is like,
Oh my
colleague. God damn, he doing it again.
So Mark Lamont Hill is sitting in front of Joe Budden. He says, hey, a lot of my colleagues have been murdered. A lot of my colleagues at Al Jazeera have been murdered. And then Joe Budden's response is, so Young Thug. And it's a hard pivot for him because he acknowledges he's not necessarily someone who's equipped to do that. He's talked about how hard it is, for him to sort of pivot from a topic like that. But like, Jay, what are some of the takeaways as you sort of listen to that exchange? What do you hear there?
Well, it's really frustrating to watch. I mean, I did hip hop radio in New York for many years. I started one of the first hip hop websites at hiphopmusic.com. So I watched my colleagues like Davey D and Chuck D as the first online broadcasters, the first podcasts like Combat Jack and Juan Epstein, all coming from a tradition, a hip hop radio tradition, a hip hop journalism tradition, where even if we're having fun, we try to take the music seriously and take representing it seriously. And when I look at a show like Joe Budden's, I don't see very much connection to that tradition. I see a connection to reality TV drama and today's online debate culture that's just all about the spectacle of spicy drama and conflict. It's this sort of barbershop bluster model where someone like Joe Budden is good at sounding like he's dropping gems as long as you don't think too hard about what he's saying. And you can see that when someone like Mark Lamont Hill tries to come into that space and elevate in the way we used to feel a responsibility to do, he's just like a square peg in a round hole. So I think it's part of a trend. By the way, this is also the Joe Rogan model that is making so much of our public discourse stupider. I don't want to say Joe Budden is the root of all evil, but you can look throughout our culture and politics and see that this model is not helping.
Is there a world, Michelle, where this is just a part of normal growing pains? Like the idea that like as more of hip hop artists sort of turn towards podcasting, there's gonna be a stretch where you need to sort of figure out how to elevate those spaces, as Jay was just saying, like, and then we're not quite there. Are these just growing pains?
I think Jay's analysis is so spot on. I think that this might be a little bit of a, I mean, when you think about it, knowledge is literally one of the 5 elements of hip hop. And so this is not like just growing pains. This is, are you making it a priority? And that reality show thing, that's what gets clicks and views. And I think it's more about focus and intention than inexperience.
Mastermind, what about you? What do you think?
Listen, they make a lot of money. This is, Joe Budden makes more money doing this than he ever made with Pump It Up or any album that he ever put out. And so he's not going to change what he's doing. And again, it is very much clickbait. It's the stuff that's going to get the engagement and the views. And that's all they care about and they focus about. Are there some thoughtful podcasters? Yes, they all exist. But the ones that are at the top are the ones that are going to get the people watching for whatever their I guess reasons are, you know what I mean? So it's not going to change anytime. It's very much like those sports talking heads that take the craziest takes on sports and, like, what are you saying? Because it creates engagement and conversation.
Yeah.
Guys, that bums me out. Like I hear you say that. I'm like, it's realistic and it's true. It's not your responsibility to uplift me here, but I hear that and go, I hoped for more than this, right? It's not just Joe Budden, but like as more, hip hop media sort of takes center stage, my hope was that it would also bring with it all the things that I expect from hip hop conversations, right? And that's not the thing that is happening, Jay. Do you see do you see a hope? Do you see a hope there? Do you sort of see like the next generation where some of that elevator conversation might actually turn up, or are you like, no, I don't see that happening?
I see a lot of hope. Even as I was surprised to see this development with the Billboard charts, I
Yeah.
can look back and see I spent the year listening to so much amazing music, almost none of which was on the charts. So I don't think, not to say that there hasn't been great music on the charts as well, but I don't think that's ever been an accurate gauge of how healthy the culture is creatively. And I think there's always going to be a tug of war between commerce and creativity. And to me, the sweet spot is where it's sustainable to make a living as an artist, but we're not caught up in this infinite growth, maximizing profit mindset that just makes everything more and more shallow. And if receding a little bit from the Billboard charts can pull us away from that infinite growth mindset, I think that might even be healthier for the culture, really.
Waking up every day and realizing the tug of war between creativity and commerce, that's fine, but every once in a while I kind of go, am I not noticing creativity just getting beat down? Am I sort of like blind to that? So to that end, maybe let's close on this, Mastermind. Between the shifts in the Billboard charts, this conversation about hip hop media, and also, of course, we have to contend with the rise of AI right now. Do you think what it means to be a rap artist will continue to shift right now too?
I think it's going to, and personally, I think it's going to stay the course because the artists that are successful with it are going to continue to be, I guess, for the most part, successful. It really depends on what they're hoping for. If they can tour and make money in front of live audiences, then they're going to continue doing what they're doing. Again, if they don't care about Billboard and they don't care about radio, then this is not even a thing for them. They're not even paying attention to it, right? It's completely obsolete to them. I think if Spotify drops off the planet tomorrow, there might be some concern.
Michelle, over to you. Do you think it's that the meaning of being a rap artist is going to continue to shift right now?
It's always in perpetual movement. I think it absolutely will evolve, but I also am excited about the future because we're in a cultural upheaval moment. And if there's one thing that hip hop has always been good at translating, whether it was, KRS or NWA or Poor Righteous Teachers, it was communicating what was really going on with people in the street. And we're going to need that again. And I fully believe that is going to emerge. That's going to emerge again.
Okay, see now we're getting to the hopeful zone. I like the sound of that. Jay, I want to give you the last word on this.
Yeah, I would echo what Michelle is saying. I think it's good to remember that hip hop in its original form, it was parties and community gatherings that weren't generating any product to sell. And even the basic elements we take for granted, like a hip hop record in stores, that came from the compromise between art and commerce. So there's always blessings and curses that come with each step of that evolution. And I think that creative spirit and that soul that hip hop has always had is going to persist through that tug of war in some form. I think we'll be all right.
Can I ask you if there's any artists that you're watching that make you go, okay, watch this person, watch how they move in this particular moment, because they're reminding me of that. Yeah, any new artists that are making you think, this feels to me like where the spirit of hip hop is sort of going to regenerate, if you will. Maybe Jay, I'll start with you. If there was anything you can think of.
There's so many great people making music. I mean, even on the pop side, I think someone like Doechii is so creative.
Yeah.
The song that's in the Grammys, I don't think even reflects how creative she really is. And, there's been so many albums, the Saba No ID album, everything that Billy Woods and Backwoods are doing, everything that Alchemist has put his hands on this year, Little Sims out in the UK. I think there's just so many different creative avenues being explored. I think it's a really rich time.
Michelle, anything to add?
I mean, there's an artist out of the Bay Area who's reinventing the whole blueprint for how to do it on your own and be very community. His name's La Russell, and I think that he's a bright spot for real, for a lot of reasons.
Love that. Mastermind, over to you, pal. Last word.
I don't know about new. I mean, I like everybody that was referenced, but go listen to that new De La Soul with Pete Rock on production. I mean, if you really are a hip hop head, and you're missing, that whole Mass Appeal, Nas's label, Mass Appeal, whatever they're doing right now, that's where I am.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. I appreciate your time, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mastermind is a program director at Toronto's Vibe 105 FM and the host of Mixtape North on Channel 164 on SiriusXM. Jay Smooth is a veteran hip-hop broadcaster and culture critic based in New York. And Michelle Santosuosso is a veteran music industry insider and professor at Syracuse University. Her book, Radio Phoenix, is out now. Look, before you go, I've just got a small favor to ask of you, if you don't mind. If you enjoy listening to the show, if you want to be a part of our group chat, we would love it if you would give us a follow on whatever app you're using to find us. That could be on your Apple podcast. That could be Spotify. That could be on YouTube. Wherever you are, give us a follow. That way you never miss an episode. And also, if you don't mind, give us a rating and review. That would help out the show a lot, because the more ratings and reviews the show has, the easier it is for other people to find us. Think of it as a favor for a friend. That friend is me, who's asking you for this favor. So would you do that? Thank you, friend. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We'll be back tomorrow. Love to see you then.